Last we spoke, I was using the asset store to grab some cool 3D models of trees and stuff and throw them around in my world. But the next thing I want to do is use the asset store to get a important piece of code, like a set of tools that are going to let us play this world like it's a first-person walking simulator or a first-person shooter style controller. So we're going to go to the asset store, search online, and this time I want us to search first-person controller. And in particular, I am after this one that's made by Unity Technologies. It's called Starter Assets First-Person Character. I'm not trying to get you to buy the $115 one that comes up first or anything like that. You got to find the one in particular that we're after. So it's this Unity Technologies Starter Assets First Person Character Controller. Click Add to Assets, and then once you have, click Open in Unity. And it is going to jump into your package manager, just like we had with our previous asset. And you will click download if it says download. Once you've downloaded it, you click import. So like I mentioned last time, each asset that you import shows all of the stuff that it's going to import. This one is much more complicated than the trees were. I could imagine someone not wanting everything that comes with this asset. So if you knew what everything was in this, you might make decisions about some of this we don't necessarily need. But early on in your use of Unity, I wouldn't expect that you would definitely be able to guarantee that we don't need access to some of this stuff. So I think for now, we're just going to import all of it. And so we hit import. And then it's going to ask us an important question because this is an asset that uses an input system. And the input system is how Unity takes input from like a controller or a keyboard or a mouse during gameplay. So Unity, as a piece of software, has changed its input system in the last couple of years. There's an old input system and a new input system. And this piece of software is going to say, this project is using the new input system. But that's not enabled in your player settings. So no input will come through. Do you want to enable this? If you do, it'll restart the editor and it'll disable the old thing. This is a brand new project. We don't have anything that it would break to do this. So we want to say yes to this because our new first-person controller won't work if we don't make this change. If you were adding this to an old project that already had a lot of inputs or whatever, that's where we would have a compatibility issue. But we definitely want to say yes to this. So what that's going to mean is it's going to import some stuff, change some settings, and then it's going to say, hey, we got to close and open back up. Make sure you save. So we want to say, yes, I will save. And then it's going to open Unity right back up again. And when it does, I will show you how to set this up. So by default, it actually shows us a README file on how to get started with this, but I'm going to walk you through it because I've already read the README file. So we're going to go back to scene, and theoretically, it should be as easy as this. We go up to Tools, and there is now a new tool called Starter Assets, and we're going to click Reset First Person Controller. And that's how you automatically create a first-person camera that is controllable using the keyboard and mouse with this asset. We can test it by hitting the play button. And then my mouse should control looking. W should move forward, A should strafe left, D should strafe right, and S should go backwards. Spacebar jumps, and holding left shift while you move moves a little faster. So now I have a first-person exploration type input that I can use to explore this world we've been building and go on my first journey in the world I've created. When I'm done exploring and I want to get back to building or making changes, I need to get my mouse back. And so if you don't see your mouse cursor at all, you can hit escape once, and then your mouse cursor will come back. And then you move your mouse cursor up to the play button and unclick play. So now we can make changes again to our project. Now let's talk organization. Take a look in your hierarchy now and see what has been added when we added this first-person player controller. There is our main camera. There's something called a player follow camera. And then there's this other thing called the player capsule. And that pill-shaped gray thing here is the player capsule. All three of these are involved in our player. There's the camera that we actually see, the player capsule that sort of stops us from being able to walk through walls and like gives us a size in the world. And then the player follow camera, which kind of links the two together. I'd like to organize these all and be able to kind of collapse them and just call the whole thing player rig. So what I'm going to do is right click in the empty space in the hierarchy and create an empty game object. And I'm going to call that player, and then without a space, capital R-I-G, player rig. And under its transform, I'm going to right click transform and reset. So this is something that lives at 0, 0, 0. And then I'm just going to click player follow camera, main camera, and player capsule while I'm holding control on PC. On Mac, that'd be option. And I'm going to drag all of those underneath player rig and child them to player rig. So that means they've gone indented sort of underneath player rig, and player rig gets a little twirly, so we can close this up. The advantage here is that now I can kind of set and forget player rig. It's not, piling up a bunch of stuff in my scene, and also I'm less likely to accidentally break it by making a change to anything that's inside of it. Also, if I wanted to change where my player starts, I can just move player rig and then hit play, and now we start over in the rainbow area instead of inside the brown house. This just sort of foolproofs a little bit of the moving process, because in this, if we had to move one or the other, we'd have to figure out which one of these things actually is the one that needs to move. Incidentally, I think it's player capsule, but if we tried just moving the camera and then hitting play and then you're like, wait, it didn't move, that's because the camera is actually through a script attached to the player capsule. So anyway, there's a good reason why you might want to just lump it all under player rig and say all this stuff is one thing. A couple of troubleshooting things. In class, I noticed there were two things that happened that gave people some issues. One is if there was still an extra camera in the scene, like there's the player rig's camera, but then there's still another camera. If you try to play that, Unity will freak out a little bit. It'll either pick one camera to show, or it'll get mad and not show anything at all. And that's because Unity can't show more than one camera at once. It can't have more than one active at once. So we would not want to have more than one camera in the scene. So we want to make sure that there's one and only one camera. The other issue I've seen is that if you accidentally did not change to the new input system, it'll show your first-person camera, but you won't actually be able to control it. If you accidentally missed that step and said no when you should have said yes to the input system thing, You should be able to change it under Edit, Project Settings, and then Player. And if we scroll down here, amongst the many settings that there are, there is one here about halfway down that says Active Input Handling. And this ought to say Input System Package New. If yours says Input Manager Old, you should change it to Input System Package New. And if you change it, it may ask you to save, close, and reopen the project. That should make your first-person controller work and respond to the mouse and keyboard now, if that was the problem before.